Hello and welcome to the Westveil Archives. My name is Jenna, I am an author-illustrator from Newfoundland, Canada, and this is my second channel. You may know my voice from my art channel, Jenna Gets Creative. Link in the description, follow that if you like art content. And this is my new channel, my AuthorTube and BookTube platform. This month, June, I am following BookBook Owl's prompts on Instagram. These are all based on books that became movies or TV shows. 2 Mondays ago, you saw my first 15 pictures to go with the prompts. Today, we're going to talk about the second 15. So these prompts are all book title, broader prompt, and we're allowed to post either the literal book or something that fits the broader prompt. So let's go ahead, let's see what I posted. I'll put the pictures up here so we're not looking at this bright phone screen. And I'll talk a little bit about them. Day 16, Vampire Academy, Vampires. I posted A Cautionary Tale for Young Vampires. This is the second in the Ouroboros trilogy by G.D. Faulkson, Victorian era historical fiction with vampires. This is when Veronis is operating a clinic, helping all of the other unsavories of her town. But she's a vampire, so she can only operate at night. Along with it, I posted Hounded, which is one of the Iron Druid Chronicles novels by Kevin Hearn. And as I explained in the first half, this is a series where a 2,000-year-old Celtic druid is pissing off all of the gods of the different pantheons and mythologies of the world. And, by the way, vampires and werewolves exist. He's got a friend who's a vampire, and he's got friends who are werewolves. Not really friends, though, they're his lawyers. And eventually he is responsible for getting them killed. Not in this book, though. Day 17, Jurassic Park, Dinosaurs / Creatures with Big Teeth. I posted 2 Robert J. Sawyer novels on this one. One is End of an Era. This is a time-traveling book where aliens from Mars, when Mars had aliens, came across Earth in prehistoric times, and they had a ring of satellites around the equator that were distorting Earth's gravity. I forget the reason, it's been a very long time since I read the book, but because of this distortion on gravity, the creatures on Earth were allowed to grow so huge. That's how come we had dinosaurs. The other book I posted this day is Foreigner. This is the second book in the Quintaglio Ascension trilogy, and as I explained when I put Farseer up in the first half, this is a series where an alien species similar to humans except they're evolved from a dinosaur-type creature, they have to go from Galileo to spacefaring in just 2 generations because they live on a moon with a degrading orbit that's going to crash into its planet and, you know, everybody will die. And I paired it with this. This is supposedly an actual fossilized chunk of dinosaur bone. I got this in the gift shop at the museum in Drumheller, Alberta, when I was there when I was 17. Day 18, Never-Ending Story Childhood Favorites, and I am featuring the entire Jedi Apprentice series. These are chapter book style novels, mostly written by Jude Watson, except for the very first one. The one I chose to feature is book 5, Defenders of the Dead, and this is one of the 2 books that's set on Melita Dan, and this is when Obi-Wan briefly leaves the Jedi Order to help these young people who are sons and daughters of both sides of warring clans, and they are the Resistance, and yeah. He's been drawn into their cause and he's helping them for a little bit. He gets back into the Jedi lifestyle after a while. But I absolutely fell in love with one of the characters in these 2 books. Her name is Sarasi. And when I was a kid, when I was reading these, I thought I would name my eventual daughter Sarasi. Obviously that didn't happen. My daughter's name is Dorothy. Day 19, The Shining, Books That Scared You. I do not have a physical copy of any book that actually scared me. I really didn't like reading Dies the Fire. It gave me so much anxiety every time I started reading it. I know it's a fiction book, but like every time I started reading it, I was really worried that all this was actually going to happen. Very, very well written, to the point that it scared me and I didn't finish reading the books. But since I couldn't post that, since I don't have it, I decided to have a little bit of fun. You will see that I have the H.P. Lovecraft anthology. That is the one book that I repeated in this series of 30 photos. but he's sitting on top of 2 of my engineering textbooks, which are scary for different reasons. Day 20, the Golden Compass, Cold Climate Settings. I decided to post The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe because they spend a lot of time in winter in this particular book from the Narnia series, and so I paired it with my daughter's cute little pink gloves and winter hat. It's also kind of fitting because the Narnia books and the Golden Compass books, they're both aimed at the same demographic, they're both aimed at children, and the Golden Compass is meant to be an opposition to Narnia in a way. There's so much blatant Christian symbolism in Narnia, and the Golden Compass has demons, literally. Day 21, The Witcher. Can't wait for the sequel. It's been 9 years, Pat. It's been 13 years since book 1. Kids who were born when you started this trilogy are teenagers. Day 22, The Fault in Our Stars emotional books. I picked a few emotional books off of my shelf, stacked them up, and took a picture, and when I cropped it, I only had 3 books left in the picture. I believe I had 5 or 6 stacked. So on top, I do have John Green's The Fault in Our Stars. But if you haven't read it, we have terminally ill kids falling in love. Underneath that, This Star Won't Go Out. This is an anthology of Esther Earle's works, and her father compiled these and published them after she died of cancer as a young teenager. Day 23, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory Books and Snacks. I took a whole bunch of anthologies, collections of short stories, that kind of thing, off of my bookshelf, stacked them over here on the desk, and put a bag of chips beside them. So let's just quickly go through what I picked. I've got Elemental Magic. This is Mercedes Lackey's little collection of short stories that kind of fit into the Elemental Masters world. These aren't even all her stories. She's just the editor, and it's kind of like inspired by her series. I didn't get that when I ordered it. I thought it was just the latest book in her series, and I honestly have not finished the short stories because they're not her work. It isn't what I bought. Eerily beautiful. Below that is The Writers of the Future. This was the 2006 publication. Absolutely love it. My favorite story in there is Games on the Children's Ward. The year I received that, I was tutoring a boy who had just entered high school, and he was really struggling with his English homework because he just wasn't interested in what he was reading. I brought out a poetry anthology from a first-year English course I did in university. Really interested in that kind of stuff, particularly Wordsworth. And I brought out this book, Writers of the Future, and he was so wrapped up reading Games on the Children's Ward that I couldn't teach him anything else that day, and I actually ended up photocopying the end of the story so he could take it home and read it. Victory for the tutor! Next is Carney Punk. This is all fantasy, dark fantasy short stories that are set in carnivals. Here it is. I picked it up because one of the stories is by Kevin Hearn, and it's in the Iron Druid Chronicles universe. But I enjoyed all of them, and I wouldn't even say his was my favorite. Underneath that is Iterations by Robert J. Sawyer that has identity theft and 4 or 5 of his other short stories. I have Tales from Earthsea by Ursula Le Guin. This is some of her short fiction work that's set in the Earthsea world, as the title implies. And then at the very bottom is A Fisherman of the Inland Sea. This is another short story anthology by Ursula Le Guin, and I haven't read any of these ones yet. This is on my TBR. Really looking forward to this. Day 24, The Outsiders Stay Gold metallic covers. Well, I did already use The Outsiders. That's back in the first part. I decided to go with the metallic part of hardback covers when you take the dust jacket off, because when I was a teenager I preferred the way books looked on the shelf without the dust covers, and because of that some of my hardcovers don't have dust jackets anymore. I've lost them. So I just gathered all of my hardcovers that don't have dust jackets anymore, squished them together, and tried to take a picture with lighting that showed off the fact that all of the writing is metallic and shiny. Day 25, A Series of Unfortunate Events, a long series. Mercedes Lackey, Elemental Masters. These are not all of them. These are just the ones I own in hardback. Day 27, Mrs. Peregrine's book with time travel. This is Shannon Patrick Sullivan's The Dying Days. This is not traditional time travel at all. This is an urban fantasy. This is my first year calculus professor, and this is his debut novel. It's set right here in St. John's, Newfoundland, and it works on the premise that cities have memories, and if you know where to look, if you know how to get started, you can follow the old pathways that the city remembers. And in that way, this book has time travel, because the main character is using these memories that the city has to access places that don't exist anymore, or that do exist but you can't get to anymore. And there's some fly-like creatures that they have to defeat. It's definitely not the best book, but I enjoyed it a lot. Overall, I think he's a really good writer, and I thought it was cool that he was my professor and I was reading it. I found out on his class website that he was an author, and ordered his book and read it in his class in front of him, and he didn't notice. So at the end of the semester, when I went to his office to pick up my test paper, I complimented him on this book. Then we stopped and had a conversation. Day 27, To All the Boys I've Loved Before, Couples. The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This is one of those books where I read it and I need to either jump right back in and start reading it again, or take a break from reading, because this book is so captivating, this world is so captivating, this is all I want. I just want to exist in this world. The Fire Rose by Mercedes Lackey that I featured in the first part, that's another one that does that to me. There are two stage magicians who have actual magic, and for many, many decades they've been playing this game where they train apprentices and they set up this grand competition for their apprentices to battle to the death. But their apprentices are never told who the other one is, or the fact that they're gonna die. And in the Night Circus, the setting for this grand competition is a traveling circus, Le Cirque de Rêve. And one of these competitors is behind the scenes running the circus, contributing to it from afar, and the other one is performing in the circus. I don't want to spoil the ending, even though this book's been out for quite a while. Day 28, Twilight, Mythical and Magical Creatures. I picked Ursula K. Le Guin's The Farthest Shore. I picked it because there's a dragon on the cover. This is the Earthsea novel that prominently features going to talk to the dragons. What's interesting about this one is when I bought this, it was being advertised as a first edition rare hardcover book, and I was skeptical because I'm not sure this one was ever in hardcover, but it was definitely not in hardcover with this cover, with this artwork, and my suspicions were confirmed when I received it. This is a high school library copy where they've taken the paperback cover off and laminated it to a blank hardcover. So there's a fresh, unused loan card in the front from 1992. Day 29, The Hunger Games, Volunteer as Tribute. If you love this, read this. So I decided to go literal, and I'm featuring my Hunger Games trilogy books. Fun fact about this, I bought them from the grocery store I was working at as they came out. I was so mad with how things turn halfway through the third book, and how all the loose strings are wrapped up with just a few sentences here and there in the epilogue, that I finished it, I threw it down, I didn't touch them for years. I donated my set when I donated a whole bunch of books to my old high school. And then Hunger Games became a craze. The movies came out. And I regretted that. And I went to the bookstore and I bought a full set of hardcovers so that I would have them again. Last but not least, Day 30 Ink Art fantasy books. I took the opportunity to stack up some fantasy books by authors that I had not yet featured this month. On top of the stack is Assassin's Fate by Robin Hobb. I mentioned this one at the very beginning of my first video on this channel. This was what I was reading at the time. It's still what I'm reading as I'm recording my answers to this. It won't be by the time this video goes out. I'm gonna finish it probably tomorrow. Underneath that is Masks by Patricia Briggs. This is the only one I own as a physical copy. The rest I own on ebook. I love her standalone fantasies. This one's a duology. There is a sequel. All of the other ones that she's written I love are standalone books. She writes such captivating characters and little stories. Absolutely loved this one. Loved all of her little standalone fantasies. My favorite is The Hobbs Bargain. I just coincidentally found that one day at my university's library when I was waiting for the bus, and I realized that I'd left the book I was reading at home and I needed something. Eventually ended up getting all of the ebooks of all of her other books and devouring it. And then finally this one, kind of a cheat to what I said about featuring authors I hadn't yet posted all month, but I couldn't not include Terry Pratchett's Soul Music. I adore this one. This is the invention of rock and roll music in Discworld. If you are at all a fan of Discworld books and you haven't read this one yet, this should be the very next thing on your TBR. And standing on top of the stack is my very ratchet chibi Hermione. Over on my art channel, I took part in a clay showdown with a few other channels, and the clay that I had on hand was dried out. I had no time to do anything about it. I made some homemade clay. Mistakes were made is the phrase that I ended up using throughout the narration to that video and in the thumbnail. But she's cute, isn't she? Alright, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed these. If you didn't catch the first half, go ahead and watch that next. I'll have it up here, and I will have another suggestion down here. I upload writing and book type content here on the Westveil Archives every Saturday and some Mondays. I hope you'll come back, I hope you'll subscribe, and I'll see you later. Bye guys!